Manipulate consciousness is to manipulate history. To manipulate history is to manipulate power. And to manipulate power is to manipulate possibilities. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Antonio. We got a great show for you today. You want to stay plugged in. We got a great guest. Yes. Cleveland, we got a little dusting of our show. Snow is concerned, so don't panic yet. You know, the next day it went away with the rain, but we are in wintertime and look like the temperatures is going to be fair going into December. You know, mid 30s around freezing and a little bit above freezing, and which is okay for this time of year. But again, we are here, and it's time for us to prepare for it, man. And I'm gonna make a special note, probably on the next show about Black Friday coming in and things like that. I'm gonna make a request to you listeners out there that I know sometime in the past we had the Buy Black network on, where a lot of these goods and services are produced by Black business owners. I'm gonna want you guys to pledge to buy at least one item from the Buy Black network and use that if you into Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever, because they got Kwanzaa stuff as well. That reach out to the website, to that country and to that company, and buy one item of good or services that the Buy Black network provide. Let's not give all the dough to the same people that got their foot on your neck and you keep empowering them with your money like that, and hurt yourself and kill yourself on Black Friday trying to get those deals. Okay, let's pledge to do that. I'm gonna speak more about it next week. At least bring it up and maybe put you together with the site. In our remote studio, we got Brother Vince. Brother Vince, what's going on?
Well, speaking of buying black, Larchmere Arts today from 1 to 6 p.m. Bonnie Venable and Rodney Carpenter have an art show set up in the studio, and there's all kinds of art in there, and it's all about Black people. So you can give your money to a Black business and walk away with a piece of art for your collection. Nothing is over $200 at last speak with them. So look, you don't have to go far. All you got to do is go over to Larchmere and you can find some art that you can take home with you. So buy black. I fully agree, Brother Antonio. We have with us Professor Manu Ampim, and he's been quite busy. Manu, I believe, is out there in California, somewhere near Sacramento. And I know they were supposed to get snow on the West Coast, and it finally made its way here. So we got the aftermath of the wrath that you all got out west, but it's only temporary. And we got close to a month before winter officially arrives. But, when you live on the North Coast, you are prepared for anything. As we always say, wait 20 minutes and the weather will change. Professor Manu Ampim has quite an impressive resume. He's an historian and primary first-hand researcher specializing in African and African-American history and culture. He has a BS in Business Management and an M.A. in History and African-American Studies. His master's thesis, The Revolutionary Martin Luther King Jr., is being expanded into a 2-volume work entitled Martin Luther King, The Evolution of a Revolutionary. He's taught at the History Department of Morgan State University in Baltimore and at San Francisco State University in the Department of Ethnic Studies. He's also studied at Oxford University in England, and he collaborated with a NASA-sponsored research project which examined the ancient climate and migration patterns in Africa. Currently, he teaches history at Contra Costa College in San Pablo, California, and Africana Studies abroad at Merritt College in Oakland. And he's teaching a 7-step primary research methodology course at Advancing the Research. So much more that we could say about him, but we're happy that he is with us today. And he's been a busy brother. He's been all over the planet. He's rested for a few moments before he gets back out there. So we're really excited to hear about the things that he will be doing and presenting to us. So welcome to 360 Info Network, Professor Manu Ampim.
Well, thank you, Brother Vince. I'm glad to be back, Brother Antonio. Yes, I'm here. Been home a couple of days, and we're making it happen.
for sure. Just like I don't know.
Right.
Well, actually some people are under a rock, but I'm finna say that you got to be under a rock not to be cognizant and understanding that there's some serious things going on globally. And we have to be in tune. I don't know how many times and often I can say this. Almost say it every show that we need to be plugged in to what's going on globally. Because it's going to directly and indirectly affect Black people over here. And then again, we need not to miss some of the information. Because if you even into biblically, if you're into the Bible, it talks about that a time where things shall be unveiled. A lot of truths is going to come out. They talk about going into the age of Aquarius, where the man pouring the water pitcher, where information is coming out. And in Isaiah, they talk about a highway coming out of, which is information coming out of Egypt. In the last times of a difference of age. Some people think about the difference of, end of time or whatever, but depends on, according to your research, what you think and what you believe. So being plugged in, Brother Manu, and your travels, where is your research taking you right now? What are some points of interest that you are leaning in right now that you think is significant that we need to know?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the areas that I've been focused on and done quite a lot this year is in the field of classical Africa, the oldest of the classical African civilizations, which is ancient Kush. And so I've been focusing on a term that I coined Kushology for some time. And over this summer, I did extensive work after my tour groups left Kemet and then Ethiopia. I stayed in Ethiopia to continue my work in the southern area of the country, in the Nile Valley region, and then also in the area of Gambela. And so this is one of the regions where you have people who are from Ethiopia, and it's not the Ethiopians that we're familiar with. These are Ethiopians in the south who have a different language, a different ethnic background, and that's different from those that we know of in the north, in Addis Ababa, the capital, and even further north in Tigray. When we see them migrating to the U.S., these are brothers and sisters that are not linked to those in the south at all. They're the same country, but there's a lot of diversity. So what I've been focusing on is to look at the oldest of these high-level civilizations and the root of it, which is ancient Kush. So I coined the term Kushology in order to define my ongoing field work to look at not only ancient Kush, which goes back into the Stone Age, into distant antiquity, but also the modern living cultural traditions. So in the Omo Valley and in the area of Gambela, this is where I've been focusing and concentrating, because these remote groups, they still maintain their life ways because they're so isolated and because they're so remote. They're not concerned about being influenced by anybody, and they're certainly not looking to migrate out of their areas. So when I go to these remote regions to look at the living cultures that still speak a Cushitic language and still practices the life ways that go back thousands of years, this is not only in Ethiopia, but also in South Sudan. So I just came back from South Sudan, and it's amazing that they have an understanding of Kush. Like there's Kush Airlines in South Sudan, there's Kush Bank, but they don't know the origins of Kush. They know that they're part of that tradition. So here's how the brothers and sisters in South Sudan understand Kush. So they'll say, let's say a woman is pregnant and she doesn't know it for 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, she's not sure. They will say that that's a situation of Kush, meaning she didn't really know that she was pregnant. And that's how they will use Kush. So what's interesting is that we don't know the actual meaning of the term Kush. All we know is that it's an ancient term to define these people in not only the Omo Valley, but up south, not down south, but up south in the Nile Valley and And so we know that these are Kushites. The researchers call them Nilotic people. What do you mean Nilotic? It just means they're of the Nile. That doesn't tell us anything. So what I've been focusing and concentrating on is the deep structure of their cultural life ways, their ideas, and their beliefs to find out the nuances that can help me to understand not only one group from another today, but can help unlock the past, because there's reliefs and other artifacts from antiquity that we see, and the people have the cultural markings across the forehead, for example, on the body. They have these cultural markings, so-called scarification, and the so-called experts don't know what they're talking about. They'll just say they're Nilotic or mislabel them as Nubians. They're not Nubians, because the cultural markings that I see and identify and share are clearly from the region of South Sudan. So a lot of the culture markers across the forehead, it may be 4 lines, 5, it could be 6, it could be 7, but not only the number of lines, but also the angles and how far it goes to the ear. That's how you can tell one group from another. So I know when I'm looking at somebody who's Dinka or Nuer or Mandari, because of the distinctive cultural markings that do distinguish one group from another. Time is of the essence, because I know for a fact that those cultural markings that we can see in probably 2 generations are not going to be there anymore, because in South Sudan, for example, in this area of Kush, the South Sudanese government and the elders and chiefs, they made an agreement to not continue with the cultural markings because of 2 reasons. Number one, because it distinguishes one group from another when you see them. Since South Sudan is the newest country in the world, they voted for independence from Sudan to the north in 2011. The inner conflict, they've had conflicts in South Sudan more than once over the last decade. So to minimize conflict, no more cultural markings to distinguish one group from another. Plus, they say that sometimes there might be a medical issue that occurs if they cut a little bit too deeply. So all of the elders in every region that I've gone to, they all say exactly the same thing. They have no problem with stopping the culture markings. The Dinka call it gar. The Nuer call it gar also. Gar just means to cut. And the Dinka call it gar nom. It means just, it's just a cultural marking. And but when I'm in the village, it's interesting because people crowd around. They're interested in the deep questions that I'm asking. And I said, okay, I respect that, elder. I respect what the chief said. I respect what the spear master said. But I have a question about this, because as I look around the village, it's still 30% of the men and women to some degree that still have the culture markings. So I wonder what he thinks. He's not going to say it openly in front of the chief, but there's people who know that it's been outlawed and banned for years, but yet it's still very prevalent. But we can say in a couple generations, it would be very rare to see that. And so I'm looking at these cultural practices and life ways, not only the scarification, but even their hair. By the way, these are like the blackest, literally, it's not exaggeration, people in the world. They're as black as they come. Double black, gray black, amazing black, wild black, blue black, stunning black, beautiful black. And it's amazing to see them, but their hair a lot of times is red and yellow. Not that it's naturally that way, but they still practice today what was done in antiquity, whereas they use cow urine. The cultures are centered around cow. That's where the wealth comes from. And so you have these beautiful black skinned Africans with yellow and red hair, but they do it as a cultural practice. And it takes about 5 or 6 days of using cow urine to turn the color of the hair that way. So when we see those with the same hairstyle, the same color 3,000 years ago, we know that that's our people. So there's people that have never seen the ancient images before in Kush. They've never seen them. So after the discussion, after the interview, after they show me their cultural life ways and they show me the sacred artifacts that they have in storage for special events only, they would take those out after all of that, and they explain things that I'm asking about their cultural practices and rituals. Then I show them images from thousands of years ago, and it's amazing how they're able to give details about images that they've never seen before, because that's them, that's us. So finally, next year, I'm finally going to be able to take another step forward. So when I'm in Gambela in southern Ethiopia, that's the first place we're going to start before we do filming in South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda. But in Gambela next summer, when my tour group leaves, I'm going to have my film crew document me documenting the history. So we'll have a mini documentary on this work on ancient Kush. So I'm excited about it. And one last thing, people should know: there's Kush is the oldest of the classical African civilizations, then Nubia, and then Kemet. That's the chronological order.
Right. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about and wondering about that particular situation and culture there. And I guess what hits me is that it's, you know, with them relinquishing the marking, is that a good thing or bad thing? I'm torn between both of it. You know, like, is it a good thing or bad thing? Because if you know anything about African culture, you know, they don't do nothing for nothing. Everything has a reason. Everything has a purpose, you know, for them doing that. So, you know, that kind of bothers me and worries me a little bit. But it's strange to see the different ideology that you talked about from the deep southern up south type of Ethiopian, from the northern per se type of Ethiopian, and the whole different ideology, and those keeping those of the culture. And it's amazing to me to see that they wasn't even familiar with, you know, the historical classical cultural way of life, and how they kept that, unbeknownst to them, all this particular time. And I'm sure it's a serious awakening for them to see, like, what, this goes back this goes back that far. We've been doing this. So that goes to show you that, you know, how those particular traditions can keep, you know, can stay alive that long, and how deep this is, because, you know, this European stuff that we dealing with is so new. They're the new kids on the block, and we holding on to this stuff like it's the only way to do something. And you know, it's so dynamic, and these people held on this stuff and was close to nature for a long time. You had a question, something, Vince?
Yeah, I was just wondering, for the benefit of the listeners and for those of us who don't know, what is the source of the conflict between Sudan and South Sudan? Why does South Sudan want to separate from Sudan?
Great question. So we're looking at Northeast Africa in the Nile Valley region. And for 30 years, Omar Bashir, from 1989 to 2019, he ruled the country as a authoritarian. So so what Bashir wanted to do as the prime minister of the country, he wanted to impose Sharia, or Islamic law, on the Africans to the south, and they weren't having it, because first of all, most of them are they practice traditional African religion and spiritual systems, or they're Christians. So most are not Muslims. That's number one. So they weren't going to allow a strict Islamic law to be imposed on them. Plus, a lot of the folks in the north have no respect for these dark-skinned, black-skinned, tall, thin Africans, and and some of them have an Arab mentality that comes from Arab culture, Arab influence, as well as the British imposing, helping to colonize South Sudan. And then what the British did, they made Khartoum, the capital, a place where Africans can gain some political influence. So some of them, they took on an Arab identity and start considering themselves Arab, even though they're just as African as we are, and then looking down on the Southerners. So you all probably remember, 20 years ago or so, there was slavery, modern slavery in Sudan, and the people that they were enslaving were the black-skinned brothers and sisters who were Dinka, for example. And I remember it's been 2 years now, when I met with 11 Dinka chiefs when I was in the capital of Juba. One of the things that they emphasized more than once, and I had to figure out why are they emphasizing this. The chief said that we're not slaves. We're more than that. And they mentioned that, and I was not thinking about the slavery from 2 decades ago, because I'm looking at them in their heyday, when they were at the height of their influence and cultural system. And then I thought about it, and I told the translator, hey, tell the elders that, you know what, that's what we have in common. Those of us in the U.S., we're not just some slaves either. We go beyond slavery, because if you start your history in slavery, the best you can be is a good slave. So what those brothers and sisters in the South decided to do is to break away from Sudan, because they weren't going to have Sharia imposed on them, and they were not going to be disrespected by those people who still have a problem with black skin, dark skin Africans. As a matter of fact, when I first went to South Sudan, what year would this have been? When I first went a handful of years ago, some of my most trusted colleagues in Sudan, because I had been doing work in Sudan since 2007, and all of my most trusted people. I remember we were we were just kind of eating and talking, getting caught up, and they all to a person said, "Professor, you cannot go to South Sudan." I said, "Why?" Because they will kill you. Kill me for what? What did I do? Why would they kill me? And so they would say, no, they would kill you if you go to Juba or anywhere in South Sudan. They hate us. They will kill us. Well, who's us? So then they were debating this. And in my experience, if I had listened to anybody, I would travel to nowhere in the world. I wouldn't even travel across to any city, even in the San Francisco Bay Area. Somebody's always afraid. Well, first of all, I'm too old to learn fear. That's number one. I'm too damn old for that. So that's number one. I went around the room. Have you been to Juba, the capital? No. Have you been to Juba? No. Have you been to Juba? No. Have you been to Jussie? Forget all this. So what did I do? I went to Juba. And when I went to Juba, the capital city, I got off the plane. What did I take? I took a picture of the Juba International Airport, sent it to my colleague. Brother, you went to Juba? I said, brother, I told you I was going to Juba. So the people, and so I tell this story to the South Sudanese, and it's always a big laugh, it's a joke, but it's disgust, because they know that the people in the North don't respect them, and they know it's propaganda. So I've been fortunate that they trust me. The first thing, I make it clear, I don't represent USAID, I don't represent the government, I don't represent UNESCO, I don't represent my college. I'm representing me and my project to help us remember who we are, to help us recover from historical amnesia. And because I have trusted people around me, I've been embraced. So I'm really fortunate to be able to have direct access to literally the most important people in the nation. The minister of any field you can think of. I've met with everybody other than the president of the country, for that, prime minister. But it's like unexpected, because that's not what I'm there for per se. I'm just there to be in the trenches. And so I've been very, very fortunate. And I was going to one place, to Bor, one of the places a little bit further from Juba. And I was trying to figure out, why we got to drive, let's make it happen. And I saw one of the brothers, by the way, the Dinka are the tallest people in the world. So saw a big brother. I didn't think anything of it. Next thing I know, he's riding with me. And this is one of the chief security guys who take care of the minister of justice, and huge guy. So if I show a picture, you say, wow. So they sent that brother, and to make sure that I'm safe, we drive to one of the universities there, and the secretary waiting to meet one of the deans who I've been introduced to, and the secretary came and just told both of us, there's no weapons here. I just said to myself, what is she talking about? So the brother said something. He got up huge. He got up. He had his weapon in the small of his back, complaining, and gave it to her. But I'm just saying is that wherever I go, whether it's in South Sudan or in Ethiopia, I've been very fortunate because my project is pure. It's not about money. It's not about prestige. It's just being out in the field. But I do recognize that these folks see me as valuable, because I'm helping to shed light and to help promote and protect their cultural lifeways. And they know that I have an opportunity to do so. And I'm straight with them, just like they're straight with me. That's why I can tell them what the people think in the North. Although that's not really my thinking. I'm just saying, hey, look, I'm here. Glad to meet you all. But this is what they told me. It just as a way to just let them know that
Yeah,
hey,
yeah, who you are, what you're about. You
yeah.
know what? This is crazy, man. This is crazy because now, I don't know if you have time to even be bothered with that because I know it might just come up anyway because of your research because you talk about that divide. It almost sounds like divide and conquer again, and you know, and with that particular propaganda because you're saying those up south, the southern people are pretty much keepers of the tradition. Somebody put that poison out there to keep them separated from their traditions and who they are and what they are. Because it was someone who came on our show. I don't know if it was Malefi Asante or Brother Sekou or whatever. They came in and was talking about how some of the Arab Muslims was having some problems with the African Muslims because they was weaving in some of uh, their traditional spirituality into the Islamic type of thing, and it wasn't per se far as Islam is sort of keeping it pure. We was, you know, just like we do everything else. We gonna weave in some of our African culture into Christianity, into things of that nature. So that I find that very interesting that that divide happened, and now here it is, these two people residing in the same country and fearful of going down to mingle with their brothers. And of course, you know, there was somebody who put that division there, and I'm sure it's for their best own interest. You know, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely, and that's one of the things that's very interesting about the folks that I've had the good fortune to meet in South Sudan is that they know that they know there's a lot of anti-black propaganda against them, and this is why they voted. A very large percentage of them voted. You know what? We want out. We want nothing to do with these people, and they were right to make that decision. So now, as a new country, they have a lot of work to do, but they're flexible on some things for sure. You know, they like when I go to a traditional event, like the biggest sporting event there is wrestling. So just like the Nuba wrestling in the past that people may know about, that you can see on the paintings and reliefs in antiquity, this is exactly what happens today, where champion wrestler will have a leopard skin around his waist, for example. You can see the hair with the yellow reddish hair, but it's a great tradition. So they take from the wrestling to traditional dancing. Everybody's just dancing, and the energy is absolutely phenomenal. But so when I'm there, it's thousands of people there, and these cats are so tall. So I don't know them. They don't know me. They know I'm not of that area. So what do? I would say 3 out of 4 people, they're doing whatever they need to do to make sure I have the best view of the wrestling, you know, and so because they want me to know, and then I can ask questions of clarification, you know, about each round of wrestlers. But it's absolutely phenomenal. So they represent their culture. They respect it highly, both the men and the women, boys, girls. They have the utmost respect for their traditional life ways, but they understand the need for national unity. They know that. At the same time, they will not hesitate to kill somebody. So, for example, you know, the elders, they say, hey, you know, to not continue with the guard, we're okay with that. And they mentioned that. They mentioned some changes with that. Then they also mentioned too, one thing you can notice is that what they do with the teeth. So they'll take out the lower teeth, maybe the lower 3 teeth. Some might do 2 teeth or something like that. Some groups might just kind of create a gap in the teeth. So that also is a cultural tradition. They said they're even willing to do away with that, removing the teeth, because there could be medical issues. Okay, so they're fine with that. But what they are not going to compromise, they said that if somebody wants to sneak into the village and have relations with one of the young ladies, he will be killed. They don't play that. He will be killed. And you know what? Hurt, get out of here. You need to go. You're not of us. So this is how they really make sure that the kind of perversion that we're dealing with here, the pathological perversion, is absurd. And and the only thing that I had to I wouldn't say defend, but to make sure I wasn't associated with. I remember one time these 11 Dinka chiefs said they were complaining. They said, we don't like America. We don't like the values. And they were complaining. So why do you all do this? And he was talking about this absolute perversion that takes place that's now normalized. I say, I don't agree with that either. So no, it's not me. Let's explain. I agree. This is promoted. It's becoming more and more common, but that's nothing to do with me. So, but thank you for the question. So, but they are very clear about the family values and community values. That's completely different than maybe not continuing a ritual of cultural markings to link the young lady to the group through new womanhood, or to link the young guy to the group or tribe through manhood. That's totally different than somebody just going around and completely violating the morality of the culture, and they will kill somebody. And I know that they're right about it, because I've seen in southern Ethiopia, I go to the groups, and you have some people that are on the Ethiopian and the Kenyan border, the Desanage, tall, same tall, thin. They're not of the north; they're of the south. And the guy has all the markings on his body, and more than the others. I asked, I said, hey, what's the explanation of all of the culture markings? And they said, for each one you see, he's killed somebody. That's okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to another set of questions. And the cat had his spirit very serious. So on certain things, and why would he kill somebody? Because it's someone is threatening the livelihood of the group. So that's it. So they're not going out to kill somebody, but if somebody wants to violate the women or the family, or if somebody in their mind crosses over to their grazing land and starts taking over, or if some animals are missing, because that's their livelihood. The animals, it's all about the cow and the cultures around that, from drinking the milk to using it for their hair, and you name it. It's just centered around wealth. Like one of the great elders, his son called me Cole, and Cole is 37 years old. Told me that his father found him a wife, and he needed to come up with a certain number of cows, so he needs a little bit of help. I said, well, how much does one cost? So I had to get all of the details. And so now that was early this year. So when I was there in August, he's still paying for the cows. So it's a ceremony, it's a ritual, so that the women are valuable. The men are certainly, but the women are very, very valuable. So they're not going to be violated. It's not going to be all the craziness that we know about here. But anyway, it's very respected, and their traditions are intact. One thing I might say, in the exchange with the elders and chiefs, I've been told multiple times among the Dinka, they told me, this is in South Sudan, that the cultural markings, they said it was imposed by the British and the Europeans to separate one group from another during slavery in the 1800s. I was told that multiple times. So the second time I was told, or third time I was told that, I decided that, okay, let me share this with them. So I humbly showed them some images from 4,000 years ago with the culture markings. So what I told them is that I don't know the specifics of what you are referring to, but maybe you're right that the British had something to do with exacerbating the problem. I said they didn't create it, because here it is thousands of years ago. So it's an exchange, because I would not have thought that anyone would have assumed the British created that tradition. They did not. They might have exacerbated it, made it problematic, but they didn't create it. So in showing that, you should have saw their face. That's why I need the film crew there to document all these kind of interactions, because they're special. They're absolutely special, and they tell a story that is absolutely phenomenal. So I look forward to taking the work to the next level and really having people understand that we have to be able to recreate the cultural traditions that have held societies together. They've glued them together. So it's not just going back for nostalgia. Oh, no, not at all. It's about learning what it is was the cultural foundation.
The glue.
The value system, the practices, the ceremonies that allowed them to be great. So we're not looking to rebuild pyramids and temples and great structures in Ohio or California or any other place, but we're looking to take the values and incorporate that into what we do in the way that we see things. So that's what's valuable for us, is to be able to create a more holistic story of the beginnings of our high level African culture, because then we'll be in a position that we can recreate it today in terms of our systems. Because right now we're in turmoil. We need a council of elders. We need highly respected people, I don't care where we are around the U.S., so that we can begin to function as a healthy community. Because right now we're not very healthy. And when I see these groups, you know what I see? If we don't hear anything, we just look at these groups, one thing we will always see is laughter. Always. There's laughter. There's happiness. There's welcomeness. Even when we go to the most remote of the remote communities, you think the brothers are armed? Of course they're armed. Are they stressed out? Absolutely not. These brothers are as relaxed as they come. Have they seen me before? No. Sometimes we make advanced arrangements. Sometimes we don't. Doesn't make any difference. They still treat us the same, and that's what's so amazing. Nobody has an issue, because first of all, when they think about America, they think about somebody white, somebody of European descent, and so they're skeptical. So we learn not to mention that. I told my buddy, no, brother, I'm not an American. I'm an African in America. So let's be very clear. I'm an African. So the way we explain it, I'm an African. I'm coming back home to help us learn about our traditions. And then they're totally
open up to you then, don't they?
Totally open. Yes. So that's what we want to be able to do, is to help us recover from historical amnesia and recreate the holistic story from Kush, Nubia, and Kemet, and how we were at the apex of human achievement, and how do we get back to that point?
Yeah, that's
if you're
amazing.
just joining us,
ahead.
I just wanted to remind the listeners that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest is Professor Manu Ampim. He's an historian and primary researcher, and he's just given us quite a bit of information about Sudan, South Sudan, the folks that are there, and the disconnection from history, brother. It's interesting when you talk about history and the fact that some of them are unaware of things that happened in their past. And as you were speaking, you mentioned Kush, you mentioned Nubia, and you mentioned Kemet. And I think I heard you say that Kush was actually first, and then Nubia, and then Kemet. What we know about Kemet is largely due to the Medu Neter. It's a written record of history. And I'm just wondering, is there a written record of Kush that can be relied upon to tell that story, or the work that you're doing is important because it helps us understand what they don't know about themselves? For instance, you mentioned the markings, the cultural markings that were part of the enslavement that happened in the 1800s. So some of them may not have been aware of the cultural markings that happened prior to that. So they have a lack of knowledge about their history that could let them know who they are, what they're doing. So I'm just curious about that. Can you talk about perhaps the lack of a historical record that makes your work so much more important now?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. When I first started the field work in the Nile Valley area back in 1990, so it's been been 3.5 decades. But when I first started, I started looking at all of the monuments. I went to pyramid sites, temple sites, tomb sites, ancient residential sites, and then also museums. So I had gone to all the museums in Europe that have stolen African artifacts. But then when I started to do the work in the field, it was a look at all of the ancient artifacts. And then so I went from Kemet in the north, and I had to go further south to Nubia to learn more about the origins of Kemet. Then I recognized I had to go even further south to look at the origins of ancient Nubia. And so I was focused on monuments and artifacts from the civilizations of the past. I recognize that the elders and a lot of the who know things through the oral history and traditions, but also the practices that are continuing today, are very vital. So what I've now been able to merge is not only the artifacts from antiquity and reading the Medu Neter which is important. But the languages to the south are not just oral history. There's written script. There's the script from Merowe, the Meroitic script. And so some people think that they now can begin to decipher it, but it's the same metanetra, the same kind of glyphs, but the meaning is different. And so being able to translate accurately the Meroitic script, that's an important field, so we can read the records directly. And it's probably going to take maybe a bilingual or trilingual text where we have the same message in known languages, that you can match them up with Meroitic and be very clear about the meaning. So the language is important, the antiquity is important, but now what I've been able to do and have been doing for some years now is being out in the field among the living communities, interviewing elders, interviewing chiefs, interviewing a group of people that they call heroes. There's cultural heroes. Some people, some listeners may know about, because it's been used here in the U.S. maybe, I don't know, the last 5 years or maybe more. But the term Jegna, people hear the term Jegna, and so I heard people here in the U.S. Mentioning Jegna, and someone who's kind of a respected person. But what made me really interested in it is not that it was used by some of the scholars here over the last 5 to 10 years, but in the field in Ethiopia, one group after another in the interviews, when they're translating from their local language and eventually to English, the word Jegna continued to be used. So finally I asked my colleague Anduwal, I said, brother, are you mentioning Jegna or is it them? He said, no, it's not me, it's them. So Jegna is a Amharic word. Amharic is a national language in Ethiopia, and it means hero. And they continue to say Jegna. A hero is a very special person, somebody that does something that's extraordinary, someone who protects and promotes the culture in some extraordinary way, or someone who is a great warrior that defends the people. That's a Jegna. Or somebody that does something extraordinary, such as kill a leopard, which is very difficult to do. And then they were able to bring back the leopard skin outfit for important rituals and ceremonies. That's a Jegna. The Jegna is somebody that is special in protecting and promoting the culture. Now that's for males. So I had heard Jegna in the U.S. Everybody's not a Jegna. And even if you have a special person who's female, that person is a Jegnit. So you have Jegna males and Jegnit. And then if it's a group, it's Jegnosh. This is the Amharic description. But what I learned is that almost every group have their own particular term for a hero. Every group. And so I've been collecting these terms group by group, so-called tribe by tribe. And so just about every single one of them. In the Omo Valley, for example, in Ethiopia, the southern part of Ethiopia, they have their own special term for hero in their language. And not everyone, but many of them, in fact, the vast majority, there's also the female term as well. So when I'm asking questions like that, it's interesting because they tell me, and I can tell by their reaction, no one's ever asked these kind of questions before. So they said, well, this man is really going deep. And they'll give you a superficial answer if you allow them, for example. So a Jegna, if they kill a leopard, which is the most special big cat in most of Africa, is not the lion, it's the leopard. So if I say, why do you use the leopard skin for important rituals and ceremonies and initiations? They'll say, because we like the spots on the coat. I say, hey, tell the elder, thank you for the answer, but it's more than that, because guess what? There's cheetah around too, and the cheetah have a special coat, and you all don't see the cheetah special at all. So please tell them to come again. So then we got to now talk about not just the coloring of the leopard skin, but the conduct, the particular character of the leopard. Then they go deep, and that's when it gets stunning. It's like, well, how can they know those kind of details? It almost seems as though it's not the case, but it seems as though they have them in an enclosed area where they're making scientific observations. How do you know those details? And it's like group after group after group, same understanding. Why? Because they're looking at the same animals who are operating. They're not influenced by anything, but just like we can be in California or right now, Texas, New York, Ohio, and and the sky is what it is. No one has to tell you what it is. We look at it and we make our own observations. That's what they're able to do. So, but the bottom line is that's the key additional component, and that is not only the interviews with these special people, but it's the cultural observations to observe the rituals and the ceremonies and just the everyday culture. That's when it becomes very special. So being able to understand that part and then merging that with an understanding of the ancient traditions, that's what has allowed me to gain insight that you cannot get anywhere else. This is why I correct and teach the so-called Egyptologists who don't know and the so-called Nubiologists who don't know. All they're doing is just making up wild claims that have nothing to do with the objective evidence. That's why, as a primary researcher, I say that documentation beats conversation every day of the week. And so I'm excited. I really am. And I'm convinced that the best is yet to come. And that's why I'm really excited about the upcoming field work that I'll be doing, this winter in 2025. But it's all about Kush. And one thing I might share with people is that two quick things. We say classical African civilizations because classical is more important than ancient. Yes, ancient is accurate, but classical is more appropriate because we hear about classical art, classical dance, classical theater, classical music. So classical means the highest rank, the highest value, the highest class. Classical means anything that has permanent and lasting value. It's the foundation, the model, the guide by which everything else is judged. That's why we call these classical African civilizations, because of the enduring impact. And so that's what's so exciting about it. And I have a plan to really take it to the next level. So from my perspective, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till we come out with our mini documentary coming up.
yeah, my brother. You know what? Leave it right here, Vince, on their screen. I like to see him when I talk to him. It's okay. You validated some stuff that I've been preaching, and it's good for me, as a personal validation to show that, I'm on the right track on some things that I try to express to some of our brothers and sisters over here about the importance of culture and what culture does for a people. You know what I mean? And because some of our young folks and some of the folks who may not know, when we talk about this historical stuff all the time, that was back then. Is it any value in that? You know what I mean? Like that. And some stuff is just timeless, like you just said, classical. It's time. And me trying to decipher what's going on with us today and looking at how other ethnic groups operate with a little bit of culture that they have. The culture is the glue. The culture is the glue, followed with the customs and the rituals to keep people in harmony in a certain type of way of thinking and ideology to keep the people, in harmony and doing something. And so that's what African Americans is missing, is a common culture. And as Dr. Amos Wilson say, not a reactionary culture based on how we was treated in this country. You know what I mean? And so there's some jewels, and I say there's some jewels in that way of life which you so eloquently laid out. There's some values and some jewels. We're not necessarily here to build pyramids, like you say, but we want to know and understand how did they keep that society together like that? Because you look at where we at right now. We can't trust each other to do a doggone thing together. You know what I mean? We can't get together. You talked about setting up those traditional systems as a council of elders to deal with our problems. And how I used to always define it. What does a culture do for a people? It teaches you what the purpose of a man, what the purpose of a woman, how to resolve problems, how to do business with one another. You know what I mean? That's what Black folks are missing today. You know what I mean? And they work so hard to keep you out of that and to wedge that division between who because the only way you can make a good slave, you gotta You got to get rid of all that stuff and take you away from your base and demonize it so you don't even turn around and even look at it. And lastly, it's I know we closing up. And lastly, is that it's a shame, and we need to understand that African American people, because we seeing it right here, that those when he came in to colonize everybody, they're not even taught their own history there. Just like we barely get some trickles of our history here, of the things that's been done. So we need to, as African Americans, need to understand that they denied them their history. It's not to their benefit to let them know how great they are, what kind of societies that they have. So a lot of the stuff like you just said, it's an amazement to them, because a lot of times they don't even know why they're doing some of the things that they're doing. So it's amazing, my brother. Appreciate you, man.
Go ahead. I just want to amplify something that you brought up when you talk about the glue and culture, and what Professor Ampim shared with us about their cultural integrity. It is an indicator of their ability to have self-determination. They said, don't bring that alphabet soup stuff here because we're not having it. And it's partly because they know what their roles are. They don't need someone from the outside to come in and police them and tell them how to live. They already know how they live. It's a part of how they live. So they don't need other folks to come in and disturb their cultural integrity. And there's a lot that we can learn about that, because we're over here trying to live and trying to be somebody else's culture. And then we invite them to come in and to police our neighborhoods, to take care of the things that we do on our own. It's the same thing over in Ghana. Nana Kwame II talks about how there was an incident in the village of Atonkwa where there were some people who were going from one village to another, and they had some stolen construction materials. So the folks in Atonkwa said, hey, wait a minute. We know y'all ain't right. So they dealt with them. They didn't call the police. They got this construction materials. They returned them to the people that they were stolen from, and they were saying, hey, we don't want to be blamed for that. So, there's a lot of power in staying true to your culture, and exactly that is what they have done. We have just a few more moments before we conclude the radio broadcast, Professor, and I wanted to make sure that you were able to share the information about the upcoming tours that are going to take place in Africa. So if you want, you can share your screen, or you can just tell us what they are. I'll make sure to include a link to the website in the description for this YouTube video, and folks will be able to access that information there, and they'll also be able to go to your website to find out more. So if you'd like to do that, please do so.
I appreciate it. Let's see if I can
and also, it's not necessarily a conclusion of the broadcast. We're going to segue over a little bit into the YouTube version of this program after we come off live there.
Right. We just want to make sure that the folks that don't have a computer or a cell phone that they can see, they'll get it on the air before we conclude the radio broadcast.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. So what I'm going to be doing next summer, and those that are online that can see, let me see if I can share one of the brochures. I'm going to be next summer. I'll take 2 educational tours. One to Kemet, June 7th to the 21st, 15-day tour. So that's open. People can always contact me at manuampim@gmail. That's probably the easiest way. MANU. And then AMPIM, Manu Ampim at Gmail. Also, social media. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube. So there will be the trip to Kemet for a couple of weeks, and I take people to 25% more monuments and sites than any other tour. And then after that will be a 16-day tour to Ethiopia. And we added a couple of days. It's unusual to have 16 days, but the tour is based on not only going to the important monuments in the north in Ethiopia, but also going to that special place that I mentioned a little while ago, and that's the Nile Valley. And we have special contacts, special arrangements to have people have a special experience by meeting some of the people that we're now doing work with. So that's going to be next summer, going to those locations before I start my field work. And of course, people can get my book, A History of African Civilizations, which is an introduction to my work. And I promised with the History of African Civilizations that I'm going to expand that and include some of my more recent field research on ancient Kush, because it's really important. So yeah, I have some of those materials that are available. So it's all about being out in the field, doing the work, and helping to uplift African traditional values, because the points that both your brothers made are so crucial. And that's why we can talk about a long lasting classical African tradition, because of the value system. That's what held everything together. The values don't change. They remain the same. And that's one of the great things about African traditional culture, is that it's the same values. But we also have to be realistic. When people start going to towns and cities, things are changing. Yes, they are changing. So this is why the elders and the chiefs and heroes are very happy when, not only when I go to do field work, but when we bring groups. And by the way, when we bring groups to Africa, it's not just a regular tourist thing where they're just taking photos and video. No, 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 no. These are cultural exchanges. So when we go to the villages, for example, phones away, cameras away, put them away. We go in as family members, that we talk and learn from them. They have their songs, welcome dance. It's a cultural exchange. We learn their names. We learn about them. They learn a little bit about us. And at the end, if you want to buy something, maybe, and at the end we'll take photos. So it's a really different experience, and I'm glad to be able to share that with folks. So come join me next summer if you're interested, and you can reach out if you need more details.
Okay. The beginning date is June 7th, and you're going to be there all of June and July, most of the month. So it's quite a bit. It's 2 weeks and then a 16-day piece. So go to the website. You'll be able to get the information about that. Real quickly before we conclude the broadcast, because we have about 35 seconds left. Don't forget, art sale at Larchmere Arts today, 12726 Larchmere Boulevard, 1 to 6 p.m. You can go by and you can get some African-centered art, take it home with you for the holidays, Kwanzaa, Thanksgiving, whatever it might be. Do that. Also want to give big ups to Tone Harley for pushing us through this and connecting us with those folks who are listening by means of radio. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make it a great day, Cleveland. Peace. All right, we are at 12 noon, and we are broadcasting exclusively to YouTube and Facebook. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can go to Antonio's YouTube channel, which is The Journey with Antonio. Make sure that you subscribe to these channels so that you get notifications concerning our content and when we post it. And like, comment, and subscribe and share. All the activity that you do online, it has a positive effect on the algorithms, and it makes it possible for more people to know what we're doing and to see what we're doing, and most importantly, to hear the great information that we are bringing to you. Today, we are joined by Professor Manu Ampim. He's an historian and a primary researcher. And that means that he's out there collecting information and basically, I don't want to say necessarily writing history or rewriting history, but I will say amplifying history, because of what he's doing, we're finding out about things that we didn't know before, and it's to the benefit not only of us over here on this side of the world, but to those who are on the other side of the world who may not be completely privy as well. So, you talk about classical and we think about the greats, who are some of them? Sheikh Anta Diop, J.A. Rogers, in a more contemporary sense. We have folks like Runoko Rashidi, Chancellor Williams, and so forth and so on. All of these people have played a key role in giving us a certain sense of identity. So I can't overstate it, Brother Manu. Your work is extremely important, and we have to do everything that we can to let folks know who you are and what you are doing. So we are definitely happy to have you on this platform. And we thank Brother Antonio for bringing you into our consciousness, because before Antonio, brother, I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard of you, but now that I know who you are, extremely impressed and extremely grateful for what you do. Antonio?
Yeah, I was just going to say and add to that, you know, brother, I truly appreciate this information that you bring in today, because a lot of times, you know, we focus just on Kemet or Egypt and don't know about the roles that Sudan and Ethiopia and whatever played into the development of Kemet. You know what I mean? So what I'm going to say and bring out to the listening audience is that buy the man's books and tapes to help him keep on with his work. You know what I mean? Because you can see right now how important it is what this brother is doing it, and even by him talking, you can feel his heart and know where his heart is at. It's about bringing the information, not necessarily trying to exploit the information for his own personal gain. He's trying to bring the information out to help us, and I think he's a part of this divine intervention. And what we talked about before, this information coming back, coming out, and being unveiled for those who got ears to hear and eyes to see, who wants this information. So I'm reaching out to my listening audience, and we're going to give you the information on how you can get some of his books and tapes if you missed his lectures that you know, when I brought him in here to Cleveland. So reach out to the brother, you know, buy his books, and even make a donation to the brother to help him with his work, you know.
Appreciate
so that's
it.
something I want. And one other thing, okay, yes. I recently got into a small conversation, you know, with a pastor of a church, and we got into the politics a little bit about, you know, Kamala Harris and the whole election piece, and he kind of made a statement about women not being in leadership role. Now, I disagreed with him, you know, from my ancestral classical point of view. Could you elaborate on that? Because I'm gonna send this tape to him after and let him know the type of discussions that we have. Because he claimed to be an historian. He said he was a historian, and I said I was a lightweight historian, you know. But so I had to clear up from my point of view, from my studies, and hopefully for him understanding and seeing that you there on the ground, you know, talking to these people, and you're a researcher. So your point of view about how the female role was looked at back in the day.
Okay, great question. Always glad to address it because it relates to the cultural lifeways. Well, the women have always had a high status and a central role in Africa, and that's one of the things that you can count on: a central role, important role of women, and a central role, an important role of elders. So, and a belief in the divine. I mean, certain things are just fundamentally African. So, Brother Vince mentioned Diop in his book, Cultural Unity of Black Africa. Yes, there's a cultural unity, but there's variation, but there's unity. Chancellor Williams called it the African constitutional system. And when we look at women, we see, if we go back to antiquity, let's go back to the old civilizations, or we can go back to the hunter-gatherers, the small stature people. And and they lived in egalitarian societies. And the women played an important role with not only raising children, but making the small homes that they would use as hunter-gatherers. They would be in these small small dwellings a couple of weeks after they not deplete, but after they use the resources in the area for a while, the hunting, the fishing, gathering fruits, berries, things like that, they would move on. So they never deplete the land. But the role of women was always central. There's no hierarchy among the small statured people, whether they're Ife, Mbuti, whether they're the San people or the Khoi. We see that everybody had a role, and these roles were all important. The men have a role. The men are the risk takers. That's why they're the hunters. You know, and what's amazing about it is that they live in complete harmony with themselves and with nature. And when we look at these small stature people who are still in these traditional areas today, areas of refuge and hiding and safety, like rainforests, deserts, islands, places like that, they still live in complete harmony with themselves and nature, and they never fought any wars at all. They're not aggressive, but the women, the role has always been central. And then if we look at it on another level, when you look at the civilizations, we can start with Kush. We see the central role of the queen mother. So the throne was really controlled by the women, and they would pass the throne from mother pretty much to daughter. That's how it was. So the mother was always in charge. And when we see the images of somebody being installed, like Asphalta or Taharka, whoever it may be, one of the Kushite rulers, the person residing over the ceremony is always his mother. And they had to send, the records tell us from Ancient Kush, to be installed properly. You'll see scenes where the person's receiving their crown from Amen. When people in their prayers, they're saying Amen. That's the old god from Kush. But the mother is in that same scene, usually with two rattlers. These are two sacred, they're like instruments, rattlers, like they make a rattling sound, and she's presiding over the ceremony, and you see the king kneeling humbly, receiving his crown.
Yes.
His mom's in charge. If she's not there, there's no ceremony. So people, Brother Manu, the professor, but the men seem to be the kings. Let's not be confused. The women are the source. The men are the symbol of authority, but the women are the source of that authority, and they bestow leadership to the men. And it's that way. Well, why did he marry his sister? Glad you asked. He married his sister because it was a political marriage. Why did he have a second wife? For conjugal purposes, to reproduce. But you're not legitimate if you don't marry your sister politically, because she's really representing the crown she's received from her mother, and you're not a legitimate ruler unless the mother is in charge of the ceremony. The greatest of all the Kushite builders, for example, was Taharka. He had to send hundreds of miles to the south for his coronation ceremony. So we see it in Kush. In fact, you know what's so special? Before the war broke out in Sudan in April of last year, the sisters were, and they still do in the diaspora, they're in Washington, D.C., lots of Nubian brothers and sisters. They're in New York, but they call themselves Kendaki. Kendaki is a title of female rulership. And so Kendaki Queens is a whole line of queens from Kush that ruled for hundreds of years. Now, somebody said, well, those are Nubian. They're not Nubian. Let's be clear. George Reisner, the racist who went to Kemet and Sudan looking for a white queen and got upset and frustrated that he didn't find one 100 years ago, is George Reisner that mixed everything up because of his warped racial beliefs. He was willing to admit that there's Nubians of high status, but not anybody else, because Nubians are geographically in southern Egypt. That's as far as he's willing to admit. George Reisner, who worked for the Boston Museum of Fine Arts in Harvard, he then goes continuously further up south. He's upset because he sees black-skinned Africans, and he was unwilling. He refused to acknowledge their humanity and that they could have had anything to do with the high-level civilization. So as George Reisner was doing this field work from 1907 to 1932, George Reisner was mislabeling everything as Nubian because that's all his racist nonsense. That's all he can muster is to acknowledge Nubians. But then these black-skinned folks could not have created anything worthwhile. So this is why people mix and mingle Kush and Nubia. It goes back to this racist bigot 100 years ago who is still being followed today. Experts, quote unquote, are following the ridiculousness of George Reisner, which cannot be defended in terms of any kind of legitimate scholarship. But that's why we don't know more about what I'm sharing, because they're following in the tradition of the outrageous scholar George Reisner, who dominates even now, 100 years later, this field of study. But despite Reisner, I'm just saying that as a footnote to folks. This is why you would think these are not Nubian. These are the Kendaki. This is a title from Kush. These are Kushite female rulers, pyramid builders, and also at times they were warriors too, because women also played a role of warriors when going to war on the outside. But let's be very clear, the traditional roles, they don't change. But when there's all hands on deck, then it's all hands on deck and women can step up. But primarily the men are the ones that wage those battles because women have another role. Not that they're soft, but let's be very clear. There's a reason why there's biological differences and physical differences, and they tell us how we should behave. But in the West, with all this alphabets, all this crazy nonsense, nobody knows, hardly anybody knows anything. People all over the place with crazy ideas, crazy nonsense. But guess what? I don't see that in antiquity, and I don't see it now in the traditional villages. I'm not talking about in the city where some things can change a little bit, but in the villages with the traditional life ways, women are central. I'll give you one last thing. There's a group called the Kansu, Konso, the Kanso, who are in Ethiopia. They are linked, some might know about the Oromo. They speak a Cushitic language, the Kanso. One of the Kanso guides, unfortunately, he passed away. Yeah, brother, the Note passed away. But I remember some years ago, he told me when he was young, he said that there was an accusation of somebody, a Kanso man had molested a woman. And he said he saw the man buried alive and he was shocked. But that's how serious things are when it's about somebody violating the traditional rules and life ways. They don't have to write them down, but they're known by all. And if you don't know, there's a price to pay. And if a foreigner think they're going to come off in there and start telling them what to do, that ain't happening. So I can tell you one thing, that everybody's respected in the society, and including women. It's not that women are special, no one else is. No. Let's be very clear. Elders are special. The chief is, I've been around chiefs that the highest status, you can't even touch the man. That's how special they see him. Or an elder or a hero, special treatment. Children, why are they always laughing? Because they're protected. They're taken care of. They're safe. So let's be very clear on, in terms of the audience, I'm not talking about women are special where they get special treatment and they're the only ones. No, they're special in a special way, but every group is valued. And that's what I see today. And so, like, you don't just have direct access to the women. You go to Nubia, and there's series of there's layers. You're a visitor, yes. You're outside in the courtyard, that's fine. And you may see the women. They play their role. They don't see it as slavery. Some of the young sisters do today. Sisters in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. If you serve, then they foolishly think you're a slave. So you can't come and ask. Or come and bring tea or snacks or take someone's coat. They see that today in America, too many now, even in our community, as slavery. Whereas folks who play their traditional role, they love this because they understand it's about humanity, it's about hospitality. And women, look at the physical structure, they're better nurturers. Why would they not be? We don't have the ability to create breast milk and all that, but people dismiss the obvious because they have some kind of ideology or political agenda. I don't see that in the village environments. It's just everybody plays their role. They welcome people. It's they don't have a lot of material things, but guess what? I know they're not dying and suffering from stress and dying from heart attacks and strokes. I don't see that at all. They may have some other issue that may come up, but not stress. And nobody's complaining about their role either because they understand that that's how the societies remain harmonious, and there's nobody who's being exploited in any kind of way. This is what they naturally do, and so that's what's really, really important about. But female rulers, a long tradition. Oh, and I should say this: in Kemet, I have a section in my book, The History of African Civilization, on the 5 female rulers in Kemet. There's 5 of them, from the first dynasty to the 19th dynasty, and the women became female pharaohs, female rulers on 2 scenarios. One, if there was no male heir at all, the woman would step up, become ruler, and stabilize the throne so there's no chaos. And the second scenario, if the male heir was too young, then the woman would step up, become ruler until he was of age. So 5 female rulers from Mernith to Sebek Neferu, to Nikerkurti to Hatshepsut, and then we have Tawozret, the fifth of the 5 female rulers. And guess what? In Kemet, we go and we see the mighty monuments of Queen Hatshepsut, who was ruling in a tradition of powerful female rulers. And Tawozret was buried not in the Valley of the Queens, but she was buried in the Valley of the Kings as a legitimate ruler. So, so the brother really needs to understand that women have had a high role politically, as priestesses, very, very powerful, and and extraordinary titles. Like, for example, I'll just end here, but one of the titles of the women was God's wife of Amen.
Mm.
God's wife of
Mm.
Amen. So it's a spiritual title where she's married to the deity. And so there's shrines in the honor of these women. And in Kemet, in Kush, this is in Kush, but in Kemet, again, we have this line of rulers, and then we have the line of Kandaki rulers in Kush.
Wow.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, you discussed the political aspect of the female. There are some of us who ascribe to the idea that God is not male or female, but God is both. So I'm just curious what you know about what their perception of or idea of what God is.
Great question. Their perception of God is balance and duality. So as they visually present the creator, you never see just male at all or just female. You see the creator and his wife. They're always together. So Amun and Mut, they're together. They're one. They're a couple. So the African concept, whether they show it visually or it's the creator has different dimensions and different aspects. So to say he and mean only male, that's not a traditional African view and belief, because there's the duality that creates life. The problem that some people may have is that if they are Christians and they're not able to think outside of what's been shared with them, then they will follow the Christian Trinity of the Father, the Son. You got 2 males, and then the Holy Spirit. Where's the female? But the oldest Trinity in the history of the world comes from Kemet that we know of, and it's Asar, Aset, and Heru. So that's the first and the oldest known and oldest documented Trinity, but there's always the balance. So this is why you have male and female powers and deities, and you always see them together. Even like, for example, and this is not just in Kemet, but it's in the region. It's in the entire region where the female deities, and it's like as above, so below in the community and in the society. That's why you have queen mothers, and that's why you have women of extraordinary status, because ain't nothing new. And I always share with my students that let's use original words and terms rather than a Greek word. So if we say Asar, his wife Aset, and then Heru, the name Aset, her symbol is literally a crown on her head. I'm sorry, excuse me, a throne. Sorry, a throne. Literally, it's a throne on her head. So Aset literally means to rule. Literally, that's the literal translation.
Wow.
Yeah, it means to rule. So so it's the goddess Aset. You see clearly a lady, and the throne is on her head. And sometimes it could be the throne by itself, but it represents the status and the most important symbol of Aset, which means to rule or throne. That's why to say Isis, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a Greek corruption of the word Set. So this is why it's really important. So when Asar is running Kemet, he's the first person to die and resurrect. But anyway, when he's ruling, he leaves Kemet according to the story. He teaches high-level values and so-called civilization, architecture, agriculture to other groups. And when Asar leaves, it's Aset who runs Kemet while he's gone, according to their own text in Kemet. So she is intimately and directly associated with running the nation as a legitimate ruler and represented with the throne. So we can look at many traditions, but the political aspect is always very important for women.
Yes. And the other thing too is that there's a certain level of respect for women. You know, you talked about that person who lost their life because they violated someone, you know, and part of the issue that we have in our society today is that some of our sisters don't respect themselves and they don't demand respect from the brothers. The brothers don't value them to the extent that they should because they don't understand the beauty and the attributes that a woman who is conscious and aware of herself and her power presents to them, and the benefit that that woman provides to them. You know, we call our sisters B's and H's and all that other kind of stuff, not really respecting who and what they are.
Well, see,
Absolutely.
you got
Let's make this quick point. And here's the thing that older brothers or older folks may or may not be aware of, but we now have a big challenge, a bigger challenge than what we've had before because of social media. Now, if you're not the women, if they're not presenting themselves as a modern hoe, they just call themselves a 304. There's hold up. So, you know, so if they're not presenting as a 304, they're out of step with what's expected. So a lot of the women now are trying to catch up with those ridiculous women that they see on Instagram, TikTok, or even now, you know, on YouTube. And so there's no shame. There's
mm-hmm.
there's no shame, and they'll literally do anything. So we can be doing nothing. We can just be searching whatever the feed or our accounts, and then you have some image pops up, and the sister's showing everything under the sun, and you got all these cats that have liked it, they've loved it, they make comments. What is that about? You know, and it's like, wow, that's what it's about now. And it's just a post. There's nothing there for these guys to thirst after. It's just thirst traps, and sleeping around, no big deal. That's just part of what they do, more and more. And if anybody's not following it, it is sickening, it's sad, and it's outrageous. And this is why around 30% now, about 30% of the young sisters are getting married because they're not marriageable when you have these kind of values where you have a OnlyFans account to show off, and they can be in a relationship, doesn't matter. I'm making my whole money on the side. So this is what we're dealing with now, and this is more and more of an issue. So the values have gone out the window, and this is what we're contending with as people have social media, and everything is fake. You know, from the clown makeup and fake veneer teeth. Are you kidding me? And everything's fake, and that's more and more the norm. So that the club culture, street culture has become normalized, and that's not an exaggeration. There are thousands of videos on this nonsense. So this is what we're contending with now: is how do we redirect this? And it's a challenge. It could be done, but we really have to challenge those to stay out of these thirst trap type of situations, and do something more positive. So I like some of the brothers now, and I mean, let me change this: not just brothers, but men across the board are rejecting it, regardless of ethnicity, because they understand that they're being trapped into this kind of craziness. They see all of these goodies. Most of it is fake and manufactured in the surgery room, and then force the guy to go into these high price date, and then take advantage of it. So guys are now just going so-called cold turkey. We got other things to do with our life. So those are the people now that are breaking away, and this is now moving at such a rapid pace that it's engulfing urban centers around the world because people can log in. This is why the safe place for me is in the village.
Yeah.
You know what? Let me say this right
brought
here.
that up real quick, Tony. I just got to get this out before I forget. You talked earlier about an arranged marriage, and we have this misperception that love and marriage go together, and they don't. Marriage is an institution, and it's about the family and the integrity of the family. So when they're looking at bringing someone into their family, they're bringing someone in that's going to add value to that situation versus this romantic notion that we have about, somebody's cute, she's going to be looking nice on my arm, will be out in public and everything, but the sister can't cook. She don't know what to do to keep a house functioning properly. So all those things, and then that romantic period wears off, and then the next thing you know, they're headed to the lawyer to get a divorce, and the family falls apart. So sometimes we have to separate that whole idea about romance when it comes to marriage and think more practically. And this is just a part of our culture. They would arrange those marriages because they're looking down the road. They're not looking at your 7 years before the itch kicks in and then you decide to go somewhere else. They're looking at these people coming together, creating a family that creates wealth, perpetuates wealth, and hands it down. I just had to get that out there, Antonio.
Sustainability. See, a couple of things is just that, that's why I, kind of preach and talk about nature, because a lot of our ancestors, they understood God through nature, and that's a quick way and a profound way of understanding how the Creator works, because you see the balance in nature all around you, and that is a stamp that the Creator put that you can see permeating in everything, in everything, this whole balance. So something that Dr. Henry Clark said, that this society as we know of will never work until we put the woman where she belongs. You're talking about balance, and in some ancient Egyptian texts that they talk about, when we talk about the woman, with women being the hero of the word, and men was to do it because they brought forth life. And if we understood with nature how important life is, you see the divine role that the woman play in this whole thing, and this society is concerned. You will see that. Now, the question that I'm about to get, and with a statement that I'm about to get in a little bit of trouble with, when you talked about some of the contemporary stuff that we're seeing and things like that, again, some might know where I'm going. Who is producing all of this madness? Who is in control of all this media craziness that black folks, because of their shortcomings here and there and wanting money, they jump into going along with it because they're getting paid, But who put up these platforms, or who's promoting these records? Who promoting this entertainment world that we find is so devilish, that is not fair, with bad contracts, taking people money, and doing all this ill stuff, talking about selling folks selling their souls to the devil and all that. Who is responsible for that we are so afraid to say something about? Please, folks, listen. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But I got the new word for them, the untouchables. And so that's why I lean towards back, all these stumbling blocks, all this craziness that we are, and we're going so far away from who we are and what we were, that it's a lot of good information. Our people wasn't walking around there twiddling their thumbs, until Europe came down and civilized us. They put some laws, some principles, some rituals, some customs that most you can see permeating through indigenous people all over the globe. They understood those things. And these new kids on the block that has been in power and control for this little bit of shorter time messed up everything. So it's important to us. And then, hold on, I'm gonna say this last little piece. I was even talking to my daughter about, we know we coming up on these holy days. These holy days is around the corner, and we're going to partake in these holy days around there. And everybody's excuse is, well, it's a time to get together with family. I know it ain't this, I know it ain't that, but yet still you do that, because if you know the power of doing things, putting out energy, of saying words, and if you knew that power, and what power that you are producing by saying those things and doing those things, if you just knew your African traditions, there's so many things that you can do in far ceremonies and rituals that you can do to deal with family, dealing with nature and things like that if you just knew your culture.
You know, I realized in a moment just a moment ago that I am sitting with a historian, and you brought up the term untouchable. So I'm living to ask this question. I was going to say dying, but that's not the right word. I'm living to ask this question. We've been having this debate in public about a certain section of the planet and land and who
Oh,
it belongs to. So,
uh-huh.
speaking to the historian, I just want to get a better understanding of this place starts with a P, and in some cases, some folks think of it as being an I. But I'm just wondering about the history of that land and the people who lived in that land and the folks who claim that it's theirs and the folks who claim that they have more of a natural right and they're being evicted. Can you shed some light on who has been in that land space historically up until 1948, or years before that, when other folks who are credited with being the rightful occupants of that land? Who really is the folks who were part of that part of the planet for so long?
Well, if we look at more recently, before 1948, everybody in the world, including the United Nations, called it Palestine.
Mhm.
And there's even maps. You see 19, because the United Nations wanted to partition the area because the European Jews were looking for land to call home. And you look at all the maps, there was no such thing as Israel. Didn't exist on any of the current maps. It was Palestinians, some people, the Jewish faith, which has been misrepresented as a race. Huh? What? How could that make any sense? It's a faith. People can practice Judaism and they can practice Islam or any other tradition. But we've actually had some events at our campus to really highlight Genocide Joe Biden and others just killing civilians, which has been part of the American tradition going back quite some time. They'd have no problem to kill off tens of thousands of civilians. But I remember one of the events we did, I think it was the International Human Rights Day of last year. And December 10th is International Human Rights Day every year because December 10th, 1948, that's the date where the United Nations issued the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so we had an event last year, and and one of the retired Jewish professors didn't like the presentation, and she said that she was justifying to wipe out people because apparently they were there, and she gave a date 2,000 years ago. I said, "That's all you can go back." You look at people from Kemet in Africa. We have documentation of Africans in the area in control far longer than 2,000 years ago. You have to come further than that. But clearly, that area of the Levant, we don't, long before Christianity, long before Islam, you have at different periods, you have Africans from Kemet in that area, and you also had other people who are depicted. You can see the images of those people from that region. They're lighter skinned than Africans, but you see Africans, Thutmose the third, you have Senwosret and others who had rulership in that area, because where you have Egypt is not that far. I mean, to the north. So at times we were in control of that area, Palestine, so-called Israel, that region. But it depends on what era. It's some political eras. Certain groups are in control, certain are not. But if we go back and we have definitive records of Africans from Kemet being able to extend their rule to that area, and it's always after invaders come in. Invaders come in and they have to extend their rule with military force, and we actually have text that indicates that. So we can go back and look at that just from a point of view of a state or a political entity. And but this is long before Christianity, long before Islam. But as I said, as we get to the more modern period, there are no European Jews, no one of European descent, or people that are now calling themselves Jews at all. And then we have a political entity, Zionism, that emerged in the 1890s. So it's a difference between Judaism and the political state of Israel that was born out of Zionism and imperialism. And they want to justify just kill people off because it's our land. Says who? And so this is part of the problem. People want to use the biblical text whenever they want to use the biblical text to justify displacing and killing off people. And that doesn't make sense to most folks in the world. So, so at different periods, you have different groups there. But if somebody's going to only go back 2,000 years and claim that they can go to Palestine and do what they want and just displace people and create a brand new state, well, we can go back before that. And there's no murder and displacement or anything like that. So it's a big time political issue, but it's problematic when people want to merge a political movement and then suddenly make, that's one problem with Zionism, and then make a religion somehow an ethnicity. I mean, this is crazy, but this is some of the confusion that's been presented out there, and we're paying for bombs being dropped. This is why people should be concerned when we have needs in this country, resources that should be geared towards the needy, but there's billions to be sent abroad to to fight wars and uphold political states. So anyway, those are just some general comments.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the question in my mind is what's the root of Palestine? When did it begin to exist? Because when we look at different places, just like it was Kemet before it was Egypt. So, what was Palestine before it was identified as Palestine?
Yeah, it's different names, at different times. But if anybody's looking at it from a biblical lens, before that you have Kemet. Before that, and like I said, at different points that you have rulers, kings, so-called pharaohs in Kemet, in control of that area, not continuously, because there's not a lot of art. If they were in control continuously, we would see mighty artifacts. You don't really see mighty monuments, pyramids, huge temples, colossal statues. You don't see that, but we know from the political record that they were there in control, and it seems as though they're responding to invaders coming in. But anyway, the word Palestine, I don't know the exact year that it came about, but I know in modern times, it's the name for the region before it was converted to Israel. That's 100% clear from every map. You can look at a United Nations map, a National Geographic map, and clearly it's the state of Palestine.
Yes. Well, thank you for that.
And just turn in a little bit, just for the sake of, before we wrap things up, I was just this morning, I was listening to a video that was sent to me, from one of my good brothers, and the historian there mentioned Russia, because I don't know if I'm sure you've been paying attention to the thing that's going on in the Sahel region with the Burkina Faso and all those particular countries and stuff coming together, and then understanding a little bit about some things that happened in South Africa recently. And with Julius Malema, how he mentioned his relationship with Russia, and and what he said was, we don't forget our friends, and I think most listeners and most Black people don't understand the role that Russia played with Africans and with Black folks. Russia helped them with the apartheid way back then. And so recently, this morning, the guy threw out a couple things about Russia's involvement, with the union over here in the States. I didn't know that. I didn't know Russia sent some battleships over here, to protect and to ward off Britain and France from being involved into the Civil War, and help with some ammunition and stuff like that, as far as the Union, as far as the North Union is concerned. Because the question came up. The interviewer was saying, why is there a divide between Russia and the United States when they're pretty much the same people? So that was the question that he asked. So when he said that, the Southern folks who, commie, it may come from that old piece of Russia helping the Union long time ago, you know what I mean? That could have brought that divide. And then he also said, which I didn't know, that Russia helped Haile Selassie with the Italian invasion. So I'm saying all that to say Russia played a big role in helping, but now he's over there helping my brother in Burkina Faso with troops, with ammunition, and told America if they keep transferring some, there's going to be some consequences. So, and then Russia came out with opening up the vault and showing all the Black Madonnas and things of that nature. So I'm just saying all to say that's why it's good for us to do our own studying on things, because we'll jump on the, especially with Black folks, we'll jump on the bandwagon of disliking somebody just because America say, it's so, and we hating people who actually got our best interests, like Hugo Chavez, Saddam Hussein, Castro. All those people did things to help Black folks, and we don't even know it, but we hate them. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing. And for me, historian, yes, but also I have to be current and practical at the same time. So I started to go to South Sudan, and now I go more and more. But before that, I was in Sudan, and so I have an adopted family in Sudan, and more than 120 people in my adopted family were displaced from Sudan since the war broke out in April of 2023. They're in different countries: Egypt, this place, that place, Saudi Arabia, Germany, you name it, United Arab Emirates. But so it concerns me because in Sudan, this is the heartland of ancient Kush, is where they were building monuments for eternity. But also in Sudan, you have the great Nubian cultures and people and tradition as well. And so the war has been very devastating. So we're not able to go. But one thing about it is that in Sudan, there's so much gold in Sudan that not only do you see gold coming from that region in antiquity, people bringing literally an untold amount of gold in trade. But when I was doing field work there before the overthrow of Bashir in 2019, I was actually there in 2019, a couple months before the overthrow. But at that time, there was literally a gold rush. There were regular citizens, they were involved in a gold rush, and these big mining companies were extracting gold from Sudan. So we would be in remote areas going to these sites and nothing there, just a desert. And all of a sudden, over yonder, we see some lights, and it looks like it's a town. No, it's not a town. It's a high-level mining operation. And so these companies were extracting tons of gold. And so what the Wagner group, they were in there extracting gold from Sudan, literally getting their profits. And so the Wagner group were with the Rapid Support Forces. The local people called them the Jinjuit. Jinjuit literally translates to mean devils on a horseback. These are literally Arabs and African mixed Arabs who want to displace the original Africans and then claim that they were never there. These propagandists would claim Nubians were never there, which is outrageous. So what's happening? So the Wagner group extracting resources, taking these resources, exploiting the country, along with the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. But the UAE takes it further. They're sending in weapons to fight the war against the people and the government. But now that the Wagner leader was killed, so now the relationship with the Russia and the Sudanese government is not through just the Wagner group mercenaries. Now it's really the Russians have they have an agreement with the Sudanese government, so they're on the Red Sea near Port Sudan, and more of a more beneficial financial arrangement. But you're right, brother. For people to look at this and just know that the nuances and the relationships. So it seems like the Russian influence is not, is not so negative. But what is very negative is United Arab Emirates, the UAE. They're sending in weapons for the Janjaweed to slaughter Africans on the west part of Sudan. They slaughter the Masalit, and their stated goal. We hear about what's happening in Ukraine or in Palestine, but what about Sudan? In Sudan, we have lots of death and displacement, and you have these crazy genocidalists, the Janjaweed, so-called rapid support forces. They have a stated goal that they're working to execute, to literally kill off and replace the Africans, kill all of the men, kill some of the women, but keep enough women around, sexually abuse them, rape them, and then implant their seeds so that the next generations will be Arab. And when they say Arab, they don't mean just Arab phenotype. They also mean Arab mentality. So I had to learn that when they say Arab, and like my colleague, my Sudanese colleague, when he says Arab, he means Arab mentality, in the same way that somebody might say a Negro or Negro mentality. That's what they mean by Arab. They don't mean the phenotype in most cases. Sometimes yes, most times no. They mean the mentality, where somebody, rather than claiming their African roots and African genetic identity, oh no, we're Arab because we speak Arabic, we practice Islam, and we know that if we can identify there, we'll have better social status. So they'll make up, so some people would make up a fake pedigree, a fake background, a fake history in order to fit in. It's sickness, but that's what's happening. So Sudan is very complicated. But, oh, and by the way, all what we were talking about earlier in terms of relationships, the craziness in terms of who's controlling the social media and black folks and other naive people just buying into all of this. One of the big things to do, if you're really a social media influencer and you big time, you're a boss chick and all of this, guess what they're doing? They're going to Dubai. That's the place to go. If you haven't gone to Dubai and waste your money on buying some purse or some expensive trip, then you're really not living well if you're not wasting your money at the UAE, the same ones that are sending in weapons to kill off, literally, to kill off Africans. So it's absurd. It's detestable that these outrageous people, they post all this, I'm in Dubai, and their ass is broke. Some of them are so shameless, they're literally sleeping in their cars and then say, well, yeah, I want to travel. Now your ass is broke, but you're trying to show off and fit in with these other clowns who post all this fake stuff on social media, and they don't have it like that, But the bottom line is, for people around the world, and including folks in this country, to go to Dubai, like that's the hot spot when they bring in money for these people to literally send arms, send weapons to kill indigenous Africans, civilians in Sudan, is unacceptable and detestable. The hell with Dubai when it comes to killing Africans, because these folks are sending in weapons so they can steal the gold and African resources. Sudan is rich with gold and oil and resources, and these UAE folks, the Emirates, their goal is to take this. Is my colleague from Sudan calling me now. So, but anyway, but that's what people should be aware about. And we do have to think for ourselves and know how these relationships really work. And we should always keep our eye on what's happening in Sudan and Congo. I did a presentation earlier this year on the other humanitarian crises in the African world, and not just Ukraine and Palestine, but what about the African world? Those should not be left out, and that should be of our concern. The humanitarian part, for sure, that's front and center. But at the same time, you have some of the greatest monuments on earth that are also under jeopardy. So it's not one or the other, it's both and. So while I'm concerned about the people, it's hard to just be upfront political. You ain't getting in the country if it's like that. So at least you have to lead with the historical and archaeological focus to at least get in the country. Then you can do whatever you do behind the scenes to help people.
Just a quick thing. So you, and add what I'm saying there. So do some research and be careful who America buddy up with, and do some research and study who they actually hate. and why they hate them. You probably be more enlightened of what's actually going on. Because who we say as friends, okay, investigate that. Why they a friend to America? You know, what's the background and what's the backstory there? And who we claim to hate and have issues with, study that and ask that question. Because I always say, have we ever heard the other side? What issue Saddam had with America, which was once boys? What issue that Noriega and Bin Laden and all these folks that we was first cool with, but now all this negative propaganda, they killing their babies, they doing this, and you never, or Gaddafi, you never hear the other side of the story. We just take it and run. And you got these black folks around here. I got my own man. I think for yourself, dude. You ain't nothing. You don't think for yourself. They telling you what to think.
Right, and that's why I appreciate you brothers in this 360 platform is very important, because the mainstream media, whether it's Washington Times, New York Times, Washington Post, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, out here, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, they have a full court press on promoting certain things. You can listen at the radio. How in the hell are they playing the same songs? I'm traveling to another state. It's the same songs in the rotation and same talking points. So this is why we do need independent media. You're right, Brother Antonio, and independent thought to know what's happening. This is why I tell people, even the relationship with China in Africa is far more complex than what people think. And some of the prime ministers, the foreign ministers, prime ministers, trade leaders, they're not dumb. And they are not in it just to steal for themselves. They're telling you that why they are working harmoniously with the Chinese on certain projects. So they do a lot of good. Now, I can see some of the other problems with the Chinese. They don't have a moral compass. They will build a dam and flood an area and not even think about, hey, wait a minute, excuse me. There's a humanitarian part of this Chinese, but outside of the fact that they don't have a moral compass, they do help with roads. They do help with bridges. They do help, and they don't care about the political structure, the political system at all. They don't care about how you're doing your economy. This is a business opportunity for them. That's it. And I've seen a lot of them in Africa. I saw a young lady in South Sudan. She was there longer than I was. We had a good conversation. So you're right. And so, and by the way, I don't know where folks are at and what they can get, but CCTV is an excellent source on modern news in Africa. And they pretty much broadcast from Nairobi. So it's African reporters in the studio, African reporters in the field. It's CCTV. It's a Chinese-owned network, but you can tell that it is independent news in the sense that, wow, we ain't heard that before. We're not getting this point of view. You know what I mean? And so, so it's like that. You know, everything is not 100% this and zero that. No, there's pros and cons. But like you say, brother, I don't care about the BBC or CNN when I'm traveling. I don't care about US Today when I'm traveling. I want independent news. Even Al Jazeera is better than, because we get things. Oh, and by the way, you know what's special and what we can do if folks are listening and we have an opportunity? In Ethiopia, the way TV works is like this. It's not like America, where every commercial break is to sell something. No. In Ethiopia, you know what they're selling, quote unquote? You know what they're promoting? Culture, tradition. They'll have a break from the news, and it's a few minutes of cultural dancing and music. I love it. You know what? Because there's so many different groups. It's over 80 groups. It's so many different groups, around the country and in the Omo Valley. It allows me to say, okay, that's this group. I can tell by the way they're dancing and their outfits, to test myself. But that's the way TV should operate. You got news, and then you break away to cultural traditions that are being promoted, not some latest breakthrough product to take your money from you.
An indoctrination. Good.
Yeah. Well, speaking of commercials, we want to give you another opportunity to shout out what you're doing in Africa beginning on June 7th and extending through July. Give us that information, and then we'll look at closing the program.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I can share this with folks. So I will be taking a couple educational groups to Africa this summer. The first is going to be my trip to Kemet, and I've been doing this for quite some time. So June 7th to the 21st is 15 days. The price you see, the $56.99, that includes everything from New York. So that's a 15-day tour. And so you can contact me at Manu Ampim at Gmail. You can send you the brochure. All the details are here. We go to 25% more locations than any other educational tour. And that's one. And then after the 2-week, 15-day tour to Kemet, there will be a second group. Those that are interested, I'm leading an educational tour to Ethiopia. So it's the land of Kush. And this is a 16-day tour. We added the extra day because we not only go to the monuments in the north, but also to the great Nile Valley in the south to spend time with the indigenous groups. So these are 2 tours. This Ethiopia tours from June 24th through July the 9th. So anybody's the tours are open, so you can contact me directly. We can get you the brochure, and this is sponsored by our company, Advancing the Research. And so that's what's happening in summer 2025. And I'm always excited to be able to share with people the insight that I've learned. And what's different is that I'm not approaching the tours from the point of view of a regular tour guide or tour leader, I should say, from the point of view of a researcher, to give people insight that they wouldn't ordinarily have, because some experiences you only know as a researcher because you go to the different spaces and places and have special relationships. So we're able to do that in Ethiopia. So folks are welcome. And also my book, A History of African Civilizations, is also available. And so people can purchase that. Our website, by the way, is advancingtheresearch.org, and the information is there. And people might also want to join our email list, our mailing list, to be updated on publications, seminars, field research, and be in the know. So that's what's happening.
Hey, I'm waiting on that film, brother. I can't wait to see those reactions. You on the ground talking to them brothers, man, and showing them that stuff and seeing their reaction to that. That's beautiful, brother.
Yes. You know, two brothers, if I can say this, I've been, out in the field for, a really long time. And this August, or was it the last couple of days in July, in South Sudan, I went to one of the indigenous areas, and this is the first time in 30 years that it really hit me, because I was going to sacred shrines, meeting with chiefs, spear masters. I was meeting with, ministers in the government, and meeting with special people. And I went when I was among the Dinka, who've been great hosts and great sponsors. They've taken on my work as if it's their own. It's a true partnership. I went and I met with a lot of people, and I was amazed at how Elder Abraham was able to organize all this. I was stunned, literally. We fly into the area, and before we get off the plane, and the reporter's right there, asking questions. A welcome line of 10, 12 guys. I was surprised by that. But I went to the Belly community, BELI. And the day I was supposed to go among the Belly and meet with the elders and meet with the community about my work on Ancient Kush, then we had so many places to go. Instead of getting there in the morning as we had told them, it was in mid-afternoon. So the brother called them and told them, man, we would be there in another hour and a half. And they said, okay, great, because we've been waiting. I didn't know what to expect. I'm just focused on doing the work. That's it. Because I trust the folks around me. I don't have to really ask a lot of questions. Hey, did you call? No, they're doing that anyway. I know that. So we get there. I'm stunned. The whole community's there. This was long after we said we would be there. I get out of the van, and it's a powerful, high-level cultural community dancing. with tremendous energy. And I said, damn, let me get ready. Let me get my stuff. So I had to get my camera ready to record. I said, this is very high level, exciting, energizing. And I was saying, wow. So then after the powerful cultural dancing, then they had a table set. This is outside, a table set up for me, and and all of the officials in the community were there. All of the head officials were there, and they're giving. One gave a brief history of the Belly people. It was for me, but it was also for the young people in the community. It gives a brief history of the Belly who live near the Dinka, and other elders gave just brief statements. Officials, rather, they gave brief statements. They welcomed me, and then one of the young ladies had a bunch of gifts, and I did not think about this for 1 second until all this was happening. And I said, wow, these people are so excited. And they said nobody has ever visited them before. No one has visited them to learn about the Belly culture. No one. So they line up. They have these gifts. They gave me some ointment, and also they're in the Wulu community, and people from around the region that go to Wulu for the special honey. So they gave me 2 containers of honey. That's the most special gift that they can give, in terms of a physical item. They made a special chain for me to wear from the Belly community to me, and then they're making these powerful speeches. And this is the first time, literally, that it hit me. I said, "Wow!" And to me, it's so automatic. I don't even think about it, because this is not an occupation for me. It's my vocation. It's what I do in life. So no big deal. But this was a big deal. And I said to myself, wow, I have to meet the moment. I said, wow, and it was like, it was powerful, and I said, wow, I have to meet. I already know that I'm a diplomat because I'm representing us. I'm representing us just on the strength of it, because of where I am, where I come from. But this was very, very special, to meet people and to really interact with them on that kind of level. And then, so I met the moment. Yes, I think we captured some of it, video clips and photos. We captured some of it. There's a beautiful article that came out about this, and then one by one, people from the community were coming up to me to make sure that I could see, understand, and photograph their culture markings on their arms, on their navel, men and women. I said, wow. And I promised them, not only am I going to come back, but I'm going to help document this in an updated version of my book, A History of African Civilizations. So I'm excited, because I'm like the birds, I'm like the bees, I'm like the cats. When it's light outside, I rise up to meet the day. Don't need an alarm clock. What do you need an alarm clock for if you're excited about it every day? So this is my mission. This is my vocation. And when I'm in the field, I'm in my element, because I'm among the people and I'm in super learning mode. Even as I share things with them that are stunning to them, what I'm learning is also stunning. And that's what folks see when I'm here, back in the States. And I can't wait to go back to the Belly community and other places. And not only that, but to begin next summer to have my film crew with me, Brother Hilton and the film crew, to document me documenting the history, so we can really share the significance of the history of Kush, so that people know that this is not just an idea, but we want to make it real and relevant, so folks will know that in the tradition of the great Kushites, we can rebuild if we embrace our traditional value system and be uncompromising in doing that.
Well, brother, I just have to say this. Again, the work that you're doing is so important. And these opportunities that folks have to visit Africa, to visit Kemet, to visit Ethiopia, I would encourage you not to look at it as a vacation, because it's not. It's really more of an educational experience, a cultural immersion, and it's a way for you to learn about who you are and what Africa really is about, because you can cut through all the misinformation and disinformation that you received in life and be a part of something really special. So, you know, the price that you quoted is really reasonable. I remember when I went across the water the last time, it was about $10,000. Of course,
Wow.
it was it was a 3-week experience, you know. So, and there was a lot, you know, and we went to just virtually almost everywhere you could go in Kemet. You know how Dr. Rashidi was very intentional about showing you as much as he could. But I'm just excited for the people who are able to enjoy this experience with you, Brother Manu. So congratulations to you for doing what you do. And, you know, folks, take advantage of this. Any last words that you want to add, either you, Brother Manu, or Brother Antonio?
If I could just share one other thing, I want to just share this quick article just so people, if they're interested, let's see if I can find that article, because you know, it's if I can bring it up here. Yeah, but basically, I would just say that why put off to tomorrow what you can do today? So when people say, Professor, it's great, I want to go someday, someday is not on the calendar. One day is not on the calendar. So you have to pick a date, and make it happen, because someday it never happen, and you never know. I mean, you really never know what will happen. So I would say take advantage of it while we're in a position where we can embrace the continent, we can learn, and people can literally um, learn from an inside perspective. That's what's most important, and bring that back, because as Frantz Fanon said, we can't try to catch up with the decadence of Europe or the decadence of Euro America. When we have our own tradition, we have to embrace it. So we don't have to make up a past that didn't exist. No, we have a past that's still with us in the present, in the value systems that still are among us. And so I'm just excited to be able to retire from the college in 2 years so that I can pursue the field work more diligently and not have to worry about grading so many papers. So
Somebody's asking you a question before we get out of here, Brother Manu.
okay.
They say, do
Yes.
you have any major publications planned for next?
Yeah. Yes, I do. One is for next year, 2025. I've committed, one of my colleagues in South Sudan, we committed to a joint book on common, um, it's like common origin, to really deal with the Dinka and Nuer. They call the Dinka call themselves Jing, and Nuer call themselves a Nath, but they're cousins. So they've had conflict, but so it'd be a joint publication. He knows, he has contemporary things, and mine would be ancient. So that would be one major publication for next year. And then a couple other ones that are on the schedule is that people mad at me because I haven't done it, but to finally get around to beginning to write the book Modern Fraud. And the subtitle is "The Forged Ancient Egyptian Statues of Rahotep and Nafret." They're in the Cairo Museum and in room 32. And I call 32 the forgery room, because these are two of the greatest forgeries on record. So I'm finally beginning to work on that. And then my book, A History of African Civilizations, probably within the next 18 months or so, we'll add more content to it. I only put in there what I can cover in one college semester. So it's a lot that's not in the book. But that probably won't be 25. That'll be in 2026 or so. We'll expand a history of African civilizations. So it's a lot to do. And there's and one more, but I'll wait on announcing that one.
Okay. Well, we'll congratulate you in advance for stepping away from the plantation, so to speak, in a couple of years and dedicating yourself to that primary research. You know, your brother Antonio is kind of enjoying his retirement, but we had a conversation today about the fact that he's still working. It's a beautiful thing to commit your life 100% towards the things that you love. So we'll just look forward to that for you, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants this article, it's an article on my latest work in South Sudan. they can just email me at manuampim@gmail. By the way, Ampim, Ampim. People tend to misspell it. So, but I really appreciate the work that you all are doing, brothers. Very well respected, and you're getting the word out, and that's so you're fulfilling your mission. I appreciate that.
Thank you, brother, for
right.
sitting down with us and giving us the time. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
And I'm go back out to the listeners. Please go to the website and make a donation by picking up some good information to help this brother with his research, keeping it going, and it's appreciated. And then I'm gonna be carrying the lights when you go and film. I got the lights, brother.
Hey, well, look, I got a couple of cameras, so you're looking at a full crew between the two of us.
Yeah, brother.
All right.
All right, brother. Okay. Appreciate you.
Okay, thank
Peace
you,
and blessings and hotep to everyone.
Hotep.
All right.
All right.